we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Diana. She started the Mastery Circle, oh my God, 40 plus years ago, give or take. And then out of that came, or the Inside Edge rather, out of that came the Mastery Circle. Of course, she went to Russia. We kind of know some of those things. She's had 10 best-selling books. But her life is magic, and she's lived in magic, and we're going to find out about that. And she's going to give some pointers. This group mind we have here is so valuable because we share really, really high spiritual valuable things. And I remember something came to her. She heard it. Are you driven or drawn? And her life has been about being drawn. In other words, coming from heart, coming from intuition, coming from a place of high service, rather than being driven for just yourself. And that's been her whole life. It's amazing. And she does amazing. She asks for help from her guides and from the celestial circle, and she gets answers. And so we're in for quite a wonderful, wonderful presentation today. And I've known Diana for 40 plus years. We met a long time ago. I've been able to kind of parallel and help her when I can. And so it's just a joy to see her. And now she's in an encore. Here she is in her 80s, and she's in an encore of life. Who does that? You know, I mean, it's amazing. And she's working with women's groups with Robin Mullen, and just doing incredible things again. So she's an inspiration to all of us. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Diana.
Thank you, Tim. Always. My soul brother, you've just been such a fabulous influence in my life. So my question I asked myself this morning is not yet a quintessential question. It was, why do I do things like this? You know, why do I decide I'm going to speak on something that I barely have words for yet? And, you know, why do I scare the hell out of myself? You know? And so do you see that this question delights me? This delight is really a theme that I want everybody to take in this morning, because I don't get to find out who I am if I'm not in my if I stay in my comfort zone. You know, there's a saying by Joseph Campbell that the cave that we fear to enter holds the treasure that we seek. So that's what I'm doing today. Part of me is terrified, and part of me is just delighted. So we're going to have so much fun today, because what I'm going to talk to you about is it's easy, and it's fun, and it's delightful, and it doesn't come naturally. So it's something that we have to really cultivate in ourselves in order to make it work. And so I'll start off by saying I was born on March 4th, 1941. And that birthday, that's the only birthday in the year that is both a date and a command. So I've been marching forth for 82 years now. And this is the most important thing that I have discovered in looking back over my life. You know, what is the key that has brought me this most amazing life? And it really has been the questions that I've asked myself, and not only myself, my high self, of course, my soulfulness, I'm asking the questions, but there's, you know, I've been learning more and more about sacred geometry, thanks to Samuel. And I just begin to see that there's got to be a better word for everything that's out there than the quantum field. Because physicists are right now saying the quantum field is the word for God. And I just don't relate to that word particularly well. So I'm thinking of the grand design, or the divine design, as something that feels palpable to me, that has an energy, that if everything is frequency and everything is vibration, as they're telling us, how do we interact with that? And I think that the way we interact with that is by asking questions that have a lot of juice. And so I'll give you a for instance. For instance, say my roof leaked and I need $4,000 for my roof and I don't have it this month. So I can ask myself, well, how can I earn $4,000 this month? And that's a decent question. You might get an answer. But if we put the energy of what we really want into what we're asking for, so if I say, how can I magnetize $4,000 in a way that's really fun and easy and serves the world? I mean, do you just feel the difference in that? Do you get what I'm going for here? But I hope we can have a little bit of a workshop here, that as I kind of meander on through all my thoughts, that you'll start thinking in a new way about the questions that you're asking. So I've told you before that our job is to delight ourselves, and that when we first wake up in the morning, that is not our natural state. We are human beings. We like to survive. So we're always going to look at our to-do list, and they'll probably scare the heck out of us. But if we start off by smiling right away, this is an instantly, it's like a pill you can take, because the endorphins start running around, and that helps. And then you can come up with a question. See if you can find a question that absolutely delights you. So it might be something simple. You could even write something down maybe the night before that would be something that you could pick up and look at and go from there. But it could be, how can the most magic appear in my life today? What crazy, fabulous things can happen? How can I delight this world? How can I make this the most fun day I ever had? How can this be the best day of my life? I mean, we're really going for the gold here. We're going for the very, very best part. And Sharon, you need to smile because we need to lighten up around here, okay? I need some smiles from you all as I'm talking to you. Okay, so anyway, let's just start here. I really want to start in a powerful way. So there are some kind of classic, what I call quintessential questions. There's no other word for me that I've been able to come up with that describes the importance of this kind of question. So let's start with Mary Oliver, the poet, and she says, tell me, what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life? So this qualifies as a quintessential question because we get the energy, the frequency of having a wild and precious life. Do you see what I mean? The question itself contains the feeling of the result. So let's think of some other ones. Maybe you can be thinking of some. And if you have a question and you want to throw it out there as a possible, maybe we can even tweak it together in order to make it even more juicy and powerful. And you'll begin to get the skill of doing this. I seriously know that all of the great things that have happened in my life have come from questions. So I was soon to be engaged to somebody who was an incredibly eligible bachelor. And I just began asking myself, does he even know who I am? I mean, does he even get my soul, my soulfulness and all this? I always felt like I was being evaluated for whether I was attractive enough, or, if I'd make a good wife in his kind of society and everything. And I just remember the day that I thought, heck no. What I want is soulfulness. I want someone who I can just be a perfect match with, somebody who's my true partner, a man who respects women, a man who I can feel like I'm fully a partner with. And I picked up the phone, and I didn't go into all those details about why we weren't going to be seeing each other anymore, but it just happened that the next day I would be leaving for Asia with my parents on a 3-week trip. And it just happened that I just knew. I woke up one morning and I just knew to go down into the lobby, and there was Paul von Wellnetz walking off an elevator, and we were engaged in 3 days. So, I mean, my life has over and over and over had this magic show up. I think maybe the secret ingredient is wonder, having a state of wonder. When we move into wonder, do you feel like, I wonder, do you just feel the difference when you say that to yourself? I wonder, that you're opening into receptivity, that you're opening into knowing something that you don't know yet, that there's possibility in that. Because I really believe that we are here to see that life is not happening to us, but it's happening for us. And in happening for us, we need to be able to turn difficulty, or to see difficulty, as an opportunity. So it's so important what we tune into and how we can turn ourselves on. If we tune into the news, what in the world are we doing? Are we listening to the news with a question of, well, this is a bad situation, how can I help? No, I mean, we're basically sitting there and letting ourselves just become totally in a trance of that the world is out of control, that there's nothing to be done. Oh my God, maybe I need to do something about my money because of the bank crash. And maybe you do. I mean, but that doesn't have to be looked at through a lens of terror. It can be looked at as through a lens of possibility, that there every single issue that comes up, that we can have a question that leads us into positive action in a way. So it's almost like we have to turn off the news, except for what we really absolutely need to know. And we need to be asking ourselves all the time, what's the best thing I can eat for dinner? You know, not just, oh God, what do I have to fix for dinner? It's an energy. It's an energy, and it's a frequency. And the physicists say everything is frequency and energy. So the energy of our questions is just absolutely essential, and it's quintessential. So I asked you to be thinking about some questions. So does somebody want to throw out a question that they could ask about their life, or something that they would ask themselves when they first wake up in the morning, or something that would empower them? Do we have any creativity? Carolyn, go ahead.
Well, ever since the first time you mentioned about how great it was to smile when you wake up in the morning, that's pretty much the first thing I do. And then I ask myself a question, and usually it's something like, what joyful things will I come across today? Or what nice surprises will I have? So thank you for giving us that gift.
Well, I really believe that that is what magnetizes what we want to us. You know, it's been 2 decades since The Secret came out, and The Secret kind of explained the law of attraction as that what we think about, we attract, and so on. But I think that this delight and this high energy, this frequency of being excited about things is really something beyond The Secret. It's something that is available to us now. So, you know, I'm remembering a time when I first married Paul, and I was a brat. I mean, I really was. I was 22 years old and spoiled, and I haven't always been the nicest person. And so I was complaining about something. I didn't want to I didn't want to finish this piece of sewing that I was doing for my mother. I had a new sewing machine. I was fed up with this. And I said, I'm not going to finish this. I don't like this. And Paul, I never seen him look so stern. He came over and he sat down next to me and he looked at me and he said, Kitten, I'm disappointed in you. And oh my God, that was like a knife in my heart. And he said, never complain. It doesn't do any good, and it makes everyone around you feel awful. And I think that was a major shift in my life because I realized how much my own energy was affecting people. And so I remember I discovered delight from my grandmother. She was an entrepreneur way back in the 30s and 40s. Her husband was deaf and very solemn, very much a recluse. And Grammy somehow just took over and she got a house on Virgil Avenue down near Bullocks, Wilshire. And she decided to turn it into a boarding house. And she loved to cook and she had a garden. And I don't know, she would just be delighted when I would come over, or she'd take little scraps and make me doll clothes. I didn't like dolls at all, which was a clue about my future. But I'd been tuned in enough to it to see at the time. But I loved how she loved to delight people. She delighted people with food. She delighted people just by her presence and making beautiful things. You know, beauty has an energy. Beauty, you know, in studying sacred geometry, I'm just seeing how much beauty there is just in patterns and nature and so much. So I think that delight is our goal every day. Are you willing to try it? Are you willing? Melanie.
So I have kind of a question because I wrote down a bunch of questions. And as I'm reading to myself, a couple of them, we're looking for our next home, for our forever home. So I said, what beautiful home will I discover today?
Mm-hmm.
And I had some other, descriptions in there, like affordable, available, all that good stuff, but I simplified it. I don't know if it's better simple or better descriptive. And what do you think about the difference between the words what and where? Does that make any difference, do you think?
I don't think so. I think the words that come naturally to you are great. I would say to myself, probably in that position, oh my gosh, how many fabulous homes are going to show up today that I can choose from that are going to have all of the things that I love in my home, the things I wanted to be surrounded with. It's going to be so completely within our budget, and it's just going to feel like magic. You know, do you know what I mean? Just keep pouring in. It's like the question needs to contain the feeling of the result that you want. But that's really good. Thank you for asking that question because we all get to learn from that. Does anybody else have any questions right now that are kind of coming up for them that they might want to try out?
Well, yes,
Hyacinth has her hand up. Yeah.
and then also Samuel after her.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you. So grateful to be here with you, Diane. I ask when I awake, God, how can you use me best today? And how can I bring some sense of comfort or joy to one of my fellow brothers and sisters in your eyes? You know, that's just the highest purpose I feel, in that I take care of people. I get to do it when I go to work, but even some unexpected times. And I live in a gift house. And another thing I do is how can I gift somebody with something unexpected today, and just to let them know that they're loved.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even try to tweak that question. Let me tell you something that happened the other day. I was invited to a neighborhood St. Patrick's party. And I'd always attended with Ted in the past. And we were kind of a unit into ourselves. So we didn't really care that much about connecting with community. And I didn't really know these people. And basically, I think we're all shy on some level. I don't maybe look like a shy person, but it's hard to walk into a room where you don't know anybody and don't know what to say. And so I thought, well, how can I do this? And then I realized that I have about 700 copies of the Chicken Soup for the Soul cookbook in the garage, which is more than I'm going to need in my lifetime for sure. And I thought, well, it probably would seem kind of weird or pretentious or something if I walked in and gave away cookbooks. But I thought, well, I'm going to do it anyway, because I don't know how else to really connect with them. So I dragged all these cookbooks over to the house, and I asked the people who were the hosts if I could hand them out. And they seemed really delighted about that. So everybody got a cookbook and everybody wanted to talk. And, you know, for the first time, I felt like I was really part of this community. And I went home feeling like I'm so glad that I did that. It took some courage on my part to do it. But it really paid off. And then yesterday morning, I opened the garage door. I get a prompt to leave the house. You know, suddenly these answers come in at all times. So when you're asking these questions, you don't know, you're not going to, the heavens won't open. You're not going to hear them immediately. So it might be a prompt, you know, and I'll just suddenly think, I need to go for a walk right now. So I opened the garage door and I walked outside, and there was the neighbor across the street with his partner and a couple of guests. And he's always been kind of standoffish with me. And my natural exuberance kind of scares people sometimes. But, you know, maybe she's some kind of nut. We should stay away from her. But anyway, he said, oh, Diane, I want to introduce you to our house guests and everything. And I said, oh, how great. I said, may I give you some books? And so I grabbed the books and gave them to them. They were so happy about it. And he said, may I give you a sweet roll that I just made? And I said, fabulous. So, you know, I just realized that it's, you know, food can be a catalyst for connection. I sometimes make little squares of fudge and put them in little plastic bags and give them out to the postman or to the guy in the post office, or even the checker at the market, you know, or I'll hand them. I have this little thing, these little tiny red hearts that I ordered on Etsy, and they're glass. Can you see this?
Mhm.
There it is right there. Sometimes when somebody talks to me in the market or comes up and says a compliment or something, I'll say, may I give you this? And I put it in their hand. I said, I'm putting my heart in your hand. I know you'll take very good care of it. And something happens. Something like, there's Carolyn holding up her heart because she was one of the recipients, right? Let's ask ourselves how we can connect with people, how we can create that feeling of intimacy that we want, the deep conversations. I think this is the most delightful, the most fun work that we can have. And it's not hard, but it does take discipline.
Yeah.
So does anybody else have any questions right
I
now?
think Samuel had his hand
Oh,
up.
Samuel. Okay. Yes.
Thank
Samuel.
you.
Okay.
By the way, you mentioned the comfort zone. I had this in my office.
Can you read it to us?
Life begins at the end of your comfort zone.
That's absolutely true.
It's
And that's,
from quotable mugs.
yeah, you know, it's really the beginning of the Inside Edge was all about that quote by Apollinaire. Come to the edge, he said. No, they said, no, too scary. Come to the edge. No, we'll fall. Come to the edge. And he pushed them and they flew. And that's where the Inside Edge came from. It's about being outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
And it's all about finding soulful community and finding people that you that spark you and that delight you and that open your eyes and give you new perspective. We had 1,500 speakers at the Inside Edge, all of them talking about new possibilities. And so I'm really seeing my life now from an entirely different vantage point than I've ever seen it before. I wrote my romantic memoir when I was 60 years old, and I see now that that was just a series of events, of happenstances, the things that happened in my life and the choices I made and all of that, really done from a much more intellectual level than I am able to see it today. And so this is really the richest time in my life. I feel like I'm kind of harvesting or gleaning the meaning, mining the meaning
Like
out of all of the amazing things that have happened. I see everything as so much, having been so much more divine and so much more magical than I've ever been able to perceive it before. So I hope everybody lives to 82, has the opportunity to kind of mine the meaning and discern what just all of the amazing things that are available. I promise you that almost every single day, something astonishes me. Mary Oliver, in one of her poems, she's talking about her life as her work. And she says, "Are my boots old? Is my coat torn? Am I no longer young and still not half perfect? Let me keep my mind on what matters, which is my work, which is mostly standing still and learning to be astonished." Yeah.
I
So,
also had a question.
yeah, good.
What is the greatest thing that can happen to me to create the highest good for myself and all of humanity?
Oh boy, good one. I wouldn't tweak it at all. Sometimes I ask myself, it just comes naturally to me, how can I most effectively light this world? Jen Phillips has her in her wonderful Think of Yourself video on YouTube. It's something you might all enjoy listening to a lot. I listen to it quite often. Think of Yourself by Jen Phillips. And she says, remember, you came here to light the world. And I think that's our job. And we don't do that by getting mired in what they tell us is the news. They're not telling the good news. They're not telling, we are just dwelling over and over on the same stories, going looping around. And I think that, we have to begin to see on our own screen what the highest possible good is. So that was a good one. Thank you, Susan.
And my wife, Pauline, she watches the news and I get on her for that. But she says, I look for what problems are happening in the world and how I can pray to support the people that are going through the challenges that they are.
Beautiful. I think looking for solutions when we watch the news, that's what allows us to do it. Because there are opportunities. There are the homeless. There are the people right in our neighborhoods. There are things that we might be able to do if we ask the right questions and get inspired. I see Bill's hand and then Tim's hand.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Diana. Yeah, it's just, it's very, it's just mind blowing and heart opening. So it's beautiful. I use the difficulty. If this is just, so I just saw this. A Michael Caine, the actor, a famous British actor, had advice that he was asked to give advice to young actors. And he said when he was a young actor, he was told, use the difficulty. He was about to enter a scene. They were having a scene on stage and he couldn't get the door open because the previous scene, they'd thrown a chair against the door. And he opens the door a bit and he goes, Sir, I can't quite get in. And the director said, use the difficulty. What do you mean, sir? He goes, it's a chair there. If it's a comedy, fall over it as you enter. If it's a drama, you pick it up and throw it. And use the difficulty. Perfect example. It so connects with what you said. And I just wanted one other observation, which is amazing and magical too, in my opinion. Your birth date is one of the 3, if you will, sacred dates that the founders set up. The first was July 4th. And exactly 4 months later, November 4th, which was voting day. And exactly 4 months later was March 4th, which was inauguration day.
That's right.
So this is something that, Samuel is maybe apprised of, but it's just there's a whole magic in the founding of our country, and your birthday connects with one of those 3 special dates. So anyway, I'm done.
Thank you. I just love that. Use the difficulty. That is my motto for sure, but as of yet unspoken. So you did it for me. Tim, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm going to go back to one of the monikers of the Inside Edge. And we used to say, the Inside Edge is a place where you come to get your answers questioned.
That's right, we did.
I mean, so that's 40 years ago, right? And so
Right.
so that idea of questions, well, it goes way back. And I'll just mention that this idea of waking up in the morning and going, there's wonder there, there's mystery there. And Michael Singer, who's written Untethered Life, the book Untethered Life.
Love that book.
Untethered Life is full of negativity and old habits and upsets and stuff. And he said, look, you are living on planet Earth. There are no other planets like that out there. Go to Mars, go to Jupiter. What are you going to find? Just red sand. It's boring. It's hot or whatever. He said, and there's thousands and billions of suns with planets around them, and then trillions of galaxies. And he said, here you are in a place with all these plants, all these animals, all these people, all these things going on, and you're sitting there complaining? You got to be kidding me. It's a place of wonder. It's a place of astonishment. It's a place of grace. And so if you wake up in the morning and you go, oh my God, what can happen today? There's a place of astonishment and wonder. And this last thing I'm going to say is, we saw that monk walking, and he was in deep peace and deep joy. And that's called the Pure Land. He lives in the Pure Land. And what that means is there's negative stuff around, but he actually transmutes it because his energy is so high. So you can transmute that energy. And I love the idea of waking up in the morning and say, how can I best serve? That's another powerful thing that will move you forward into the day and out of the little ego and out of the little self. So this is all true magic, but it requires practice. You have to work at it. You actually have to work at it, because all our lives we've been conditioned otherwise.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Several things came up for me. We live in our egos way too much. That question you mentioned earlier, are you driven or are you drawn, is a really good question for noticing the difference. When I'm driven, I'm trying to control things. I have a kind of a limited view of what things can become, and I'm attached to that result. But when we're soulful, as all of us are at the Mastery Circle, we can live in our essence instead. And this is a term that I coined, the difference, ego to essence. I remember it was Gary Zukav, when he spoke, he was our last speaker at the Inside Edge. And he mentioned that it's a good thing to be able to align our personality with our soul. And I kind of sat with that for a while, and ego to essence is what came up for me. And so I asked myself that question constantly, many, many times a day. as I'm deciding what it is I want to do, or what next steps I'm going to take. And that's another great question is, what is the most efficient step I might take toward whatever it is, just stepping stones. I think I've told you this story before, but this is coming up for me right now, so I'll throw it in because I got to study with Roger Housden, who's the author of 10 Poems to Save Your Life and 10 Poems to Do This and 10 Poems to Do That. And he's one of my favorite communicators. And he was telling about a time that he was in his home in London and the doorbell rang and he went to the door and here was this Chinese gentleman. And he didn't know him. And this man said to him that he said he didn't know why, but he was drawn to come and tell him a story. And so Roger invited him in and he made some tea. And this Chinese gentleman said, I want to tell you this story. I'm not sure why, but the night before I left China forever, many years ago, my grandfather came to me and invited me to go on a walk down by the river. And so we went down by the river and the river was clouded in mist. You couldn't see hardly anything. And his grandfather took him over by the edge of the river and he said, you see that stone right there? And there was this stone right off, this big stone right off the shore. And he said, yes. And he said, that stone is a stepping stone. Your life will be like this. You can only see one at a time. So I think that these kinds of questions that we have are what clear the mist for us, that allow us to see that next step. And there's a new book out on the subject of awe. And that's right up there with wonder. Awe is, how can our lives be filled with awe? When, as you were saying, Tim, we live in an amazing world. It's incredible, but we go around like we're in a trance, or that we've got a hood over our heads or something that we're not even noticing. All the beauty and all the grandeur and all the amazing people. And when we connect with them, what magic goes forth out of that. So are there any other questions here I have a couple last things to say. Go back to Samuel.
What was the name of the book?
Awe.
Left me hanging there.
It's called Awe. The name of the book is Awe. You can find it. It's a new release. You'll see it on Amazon. I don't have the title right here, but it's wonderful that somebody's written a book on that. I've never seen a book written on that before.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? Any other questions or ideas or thoughts?
We have about 10 minutes, Diana. So if you want to take another question or
Pamela has a question. Yeah,
Pam-
Pamela, turn your sound on.
Okay, great. Okay, got it. Right. Okay. All right, wherever I am, I can't. If right now Tim is in front of me, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Okay, I'm dealing with we're asking quintessential questions, and mine now is, how can I make changes and they don't revert back like a spring to where I started? So for example, 2 or 3 days ago, my stomach was flat. I could fit into a certain kind of slacks and so forth. And then the day next, I had 2 cheeseburgers with a pile of onions and honey and all kinds of stuff. And this whole eating thing is like a metaphor, back and forth, back and forth. And that's just one area. And then there's a moment where I'm totally focused, and then there's a spring. It springs me back, and I'm doing 7 things at one time. So So do you have any
I
wisdom?
do. I have some great solutions here. Do you see that you're putting what you don't want in your question?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
that's to
okay, so
communicate. We just-
yeah, it's really interesting because you're saying so that I don't spring back. Well, springing back isn't what you want, you know?
No, I don't want to spring. Well,
Okay.
part of me wants to spring back, but the higher part is requesting that I don't spring back.
No,
I-
okay, so, but I mean, just, you have to let go. You really have to just put behind you. Do not use your rear view mirror in answering these questions, okay? Or asking these questions. So it might be something like, how can I have the most radiant health and vitality and feel fantastic by choosing the right foods? You know, what foods are calling to me that I know that my body's going to love? Do you see what I mean? You're not having anything negative in there. So this is like your GPS, God's positioning system. Okay, we have this natural knowing. We have this ability to discern where we really want to go. You know, I love Yogi Berra. Yogi Berra was one of the greatest philosophers of all time, I think. He asked these amazing questions and makes statements. He says, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere else. It's hysterical. Okay, so we don't want to feel hopeless and worried. We don't, it doesn't do us any good if we're looking in the rearview mirror. We only want to see the absolute ultimate desired result. So we'll come up with a few more questions here. We just
Thank
have
you.
a few more minutes. Anybody else have Sharon Lindsay? I get to hear from Sharonsky.
Hi, baby.
Hi.
So, one of my questions is that in my life experience is that, and this is so directly what you're talking about, and it's a choice of how we view the world as a choice, is that for me, I'm the kind of personality that looks at the world and it gets me in my gut. And, you know, I see the sadness, I see the struggle, I see the strife, I see the lies and all of this good stuff. And how does one, I'm trying to work on is being positive about what reality is and also being positive about what my life is. How do you balance my I know it's all perception, but there is so much going on, and there's a part of me that it's like probably the Jewish guilt that I have, you know, the generations of whatever. But, you know, it's like allowing oneself to be joyful when there is not so much joy going on. And what is that about?
Well, you know, it's really, I understand that it's a difficult question sometimes, especially when you have been brought up in a culture of dwelling on pain or suffering historically in your family and so on. I mean, I don't mean to be glib. I really
Be
don't.
glib, honey, be glib.
Well, glib works for me, I guess.
Go, I love glib. Go for it.
But it takes work in that situation. I'm not saying that this is what comes naturally to us, because we're human beings and we
Right.
want to survive and we want to be aware and we want to live in what is something that I don't think exists necessarily, which is reality. Because it's just so
Now that's cool. I'd love to know more about that. Now that's
well, what is reality but somebody's opinion, unless we are so soul-centered that we see it all as absolutely divine.
Okay. What is reality? Okay.
Yeah, that might be a fun question for you, because we're just immersed. We're in a trance. We've been trained over and over and continue to be trained over and over daily by what people tell us and their perception of reality, but it isn't reality. Reality is that right in this very moment, you are a divine being sitting in a comfortable, beautiful home with all the potential and all the possibilities in the world available to you.
Okay.
To me, that's reality.
Right.
Melanie had
That's gorgeous.
Thank you. Melanie?
I just wanted to add that as I've been listening to you writing down every great question, what blah blah blah. I just, I was remembering what you'd said about the feeling of being emotionally charged and connected with it. So I just repeated some of these in my mind and to see which one I could be the most emotionally connected to and charged. And I just had this, wow, I can get deep with this particular thing. And so I don't think it's a, take one, one and all, but, really crafting something you could repeat and build a muscle with.
Yes. Yes, you did it. You got it. That's what I wanted, and with all my heart, was for you to get that today. That's the thing.
Thank you so much.
crafting. Yeah, it is. That's where joy lives, inside of that. And I really think joy is reality. So I can ask myself a lot of questions about that. So let me close with a few quintessential questions. How amazing can your life become? How joyful, how astonishing, how crazy good can it become? How good can you get at sparking delight in yourself? You can't wait for somebody else to do that. I think that's been the key to my whole life, is that I can spark delight in myself. I can count on it. I can do it every single day. And here's a question to live in. How much good can you stand? How much good can you stand? I'll just let that be the last question.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Diana.